Okay, here we are. It's our first in the studio
Welcome,
day.
guys. Virtual studio. Okay, well, I'm really excited because now it's fun time, and we're halfway between now and the weekend, so there's still a lot of work to do. And I think it's great that we're taking a pause, to focus on something so important like building a science fiction novel, and it starts today, right?
What could be more important than that, right?
Wait, guys, time out. I need to know. Are you ready to go on this journey?
Ooh.
The red pill or the blue pill? Welcome to the Matrix.
Let's see how deep this rabbit hole goes.
Yes! That is my business partner. So proud.
Remember, you can't climb back out once you've gone in, right? That's awesome.
Let's do it.
Speaking of the Matrix, guys, what can you say about the Matrix? I mean, was it something that you sunk your teeth into and got involved with in almost like a cult mentality type of thing? Did you really get into it, or were you passively just watching it and it was a good flick?
Oh, I loved it. I was obsessed with it. Matrix Reloaded is still my number 3 favorite movie of all time. So I loved how cool it was, how cerebral it was, how it blew people's minds out of the water. They invented new filming technology to do the bullet time. Like, they went epic. They're like, let's make something that's ever made before, right? And they did it, and that's amazing. So, what about you, Dan?
Yeah, I really liked it. I don't think I was maybe as, not cults, definitely, but I loved it. I've definitely watched The Matrix probably close to 20 times. Sure. So the first one, and then the second and third, not as many, but repeatedly.
Yeah. So the Matrix, you guys, let's have a little bit of a poll or a guess here between the three of us. When do you think that the Matrix came out? If you were, I'm consulting the Google Oracle right
1999. now. The next two in 2003 and 2004.
Okay, so we got the residential expert here. Yes.
Yeah. I had to wait 4 agonizing years to find out. It's very traumatic for me.
So this was college years, right? This is university, full on, master's level years, right? Right into the thick of things.
Exactly. Yeah. This is when we were primed to be indoctrined with big ideas, right?
Yeah, it's great, and then it has a little soft spot in my heart because when I first met Adam, right, he'd come in, and my maiden name is Smith, right? So he'd come in and call me Agent Smith, right?
It's the quality,
and he'd be like, "Hey, Agent." Yeah. So that was my nickname for the longest time, for years when we were working together. He'd call me Agent. And so I was like, nerd reference.
Right. I had a few people do I don't know how you describe the voice, but Anderson, sort of thing, right? So there's, Anderson. That type of thing, right? So, that's really interesting. And then, so the Y2K was something that was, kind of on the minds of everybody prior to that rollover of the 2000, right?
Yeah, it was going to be back to the Stone Ages, and maybe one light bulb flickered, and that was it. Right?
I know, really. All the machines are gonna just collapse, right? That was a really interesting thing. So, fear has a big part to play in the minds of culture. And speaking of that, when we leverage on the fear levers within our psychology, there's a lot of potential good as well as harm that can happen out of these novels. So I also look at a responsibility that an author has, and I think to myself, ultimately at the core of this book, on this collaborative exercise and authorship that we're going to be working on, I'd like to spend a little bit of time today talking about the main thrusts of the theme. Right? This is what are the things that you want to draw out on a thematic perspective?
Well, I think it's perfect that you brought up the Matrix. You know, it was on purpose, but that was kind of maybe part of the inspiration for our kind of idea, right? We deal in this realm of business and engagement and people and team building and how humans work together and that kind of thing. And we kind of, if we extrapolate into the future, we said, well, what if business was done in like an Oasis environment, like Ready Player One or like the Matrix, and that's kind of where you did business and where you interacted, and it was a super virtual cerebral world. But then what would happen to human connection, and how would that look like? And you know, what would a transformation in that realm look like? Did I capture that, Caitlin?
Yeah. Oh, perfectly. Yeah, exactly. So this is where it's really interesting. And the cool thing you can do with sci-fi is that like slivers of truth or pivotal moments. And we're going to take this, this crisis that we're all going through as kind of like the pivotal moment in history that started this snowball effect to where our story takes place, right? Wow. And so we're going to project like the truth that we're living right now is we're on the pivotal moment, and that's where this future has come from. So it's going to be so interesting how it changes, you know, economy, how it changes how we interact with each other, with our homes, with our families, at business and everything. And it really is that journey of a personal connection that has been transformed through digital, I guess, reach and mechanism.
Okay, so something that doesn't have to show up in the novel at all, but I want to get your guys' take on something called transhumanism. And so transhumanism is this merger between humans and moving into integration, a complete singularity with technology. So I do see the overlap, but I'm curious about, are you guys okay? We've got he's dialing in there. Yeah.
It's like I can read your mind.
Yeah.
Is this what you're talking about? Like this kind of like we're now merging ourselves. Funny enough, like the very first kind of concept we talked about was getting chipped in. And yes. This is funny because like, you know, the whole Elon Musk concept came out of actually chipping people in, and then there's this conspiracy of, you know, vaccines chipping people and all this stuff going on. So I mean, conspiracy or not, like people have thought about it.
Yeah. How do you detach from what we're thinking, and is there an undercurrent of deterministic outcomes that happen just from our consciousness thinking about it, right? Mm-hmm. Like our social, cultural consciousness actually moving in that direction.
Well, you know, transhuman, you know, that's interesting concept, right? Because, you know, you could say, you know, maybe it is an inevitable that us as an individual consciousness are kind of destined or are like designed to try and connect with each other and try and create this larger consciousness or whatever you want to call it, right? So is this merging with technology, is it really inevitable? Are we kind of like pre-programmed to connect with each other to the point that we will forever try and connect more and more and more and more and more till the end of time, whatever that looks like?
Yeah, you know, I want to bring up a concept that I don't know if you guys know, but I have for probably too many years been working on a novel called Will Freeman. Did I tell you about that novel?
No.
No.
No. Well, it's about artificial intelligence, oddly enough. Mm-hmm. And then philosophical, obviously you can see the connection there. But Will Freeman was the name of the novel, and I fought against trying to move this into a science fiction futurity. I was trying to fight against that, and I don't know entirely why. Whether it was a bias or not. I didn't want it to have the label of science fiction for some particular reason. And again, I can't really articulate why. I think probably because I didn't have a tremendous amount of direct experience or influences in the science fiction genre, right?
Okay.
I spend a lot of my time in historical nonfiction, right? And so I wanted to do something that was more geared towards that sort of approach. But anyways, the premise of the book is such that we have this narrative in culture that artificial intelligence is bad and the boogeyman's going to come and get you. And we got to be careful that artificial intelligence isn't going to be one of those existential threats that completely take over the world and, this type of thing. And so one of the things that an author can do is they can take a dominant narrative and a sentiment that goes across society and show an alternative to it, right? Mm-hmm. And so the premise of the book was that humanity had an expiration date, right? And I guess arbitrarily picked 2062. And what happens is that if you can imagine for a minute, we knew 100% that there was no biological life on the planet, or humanity, sapiens, was actually going to just gone for sure by 2062, right? Okay. So the premise is to say, all right, well, shit, what do we do? How do we now capture humanity in a semi-quasi biological, inventive artificial intelligence? What do we put into this thing? You know what I'm saying? And that was the idea. And instantly it turns the sentiment around to, from foe to friend, right? Because this is our entire lineage of moving culture forward, is that there is no other choice. We either have something that represents humanity into the future, right? Or we have nothing. And so the choice is, what do you put in this entity? What do you put in it, to represent humanity? And that was a whole different approach to how to, program, so to speak, an artificial intelligence.
Interesting.
Well, this really makes me think of, if you take a business as an entity, right? You're talking about programming a simulation or an AI, but when you're programming a business, like kind of a similar concept, like what parts of humanity do you want in there, right? Like what is your legacy? What is your imprint on the world? If your business were to cease to exist tomorrow, what would the world lose? Right? That's a kind of powerful question, right? So
that's very good, Adam, because you asked that question in a way. I was reflecting on it when I was doing some writing earlier this week, and there's sequences as we go through life, right? We talk about that Matrix time period when we're roughly all post college, like emerging into the workforce and all this kind of thing, right? The internet was really just coming out in a big way. I think we can look up when Google started. We all remember a world prior to Google. My kids don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, social media, all those things, right? Yeah. So
I guess the point is that if you look at that and you kind of think about what's the world going to be like in 500 years. I'm not even trying to extrapolate based off of Moore's law that technology is doubling and all this kind of thing. I don't have to do that. But what I am saying is that what happens to our biological evolution, and not so much in 500 years, 500,000 years, or 5 million years, right? So evolution is all about time, right? And so it's like, what is a human species, if it's even alive, what would it possibly even look like in 5 million years?
Yeah, that's so interesting, right? Because we're evolving at such a slow rate, but we're experimenting with things that are accelerating that, right? When we talk about the stem cell research, when we talk about messing with our genomes and adjusting these kind of things, and you talk about creating a baby exactly the way you want it, your designer baby, right? Like these are concepts, and the science is already there to back them up, that we are just literally not doing out of ethical choice, but have the capability to do. So at one point, if we push through those ethical barriers and say that we're going to do these things, we're going to take leaps and bounds, and maybe not the direction that nature would have originally taken us. So the possibilities are infinite under that one.
Well, isn't it, was it Arthur C. Clarke said that any technology sufficiently advanced from your reference point would seem like magic? Like,
right.
Yeah.
You know, there's all sorts of amazing stories that can come out of that, right? You don't even have to explain it. You just say it's future. It's too advanced.
You know, I always, this is one thing that I always thought I would like, you know, it'd be funny if evolve, but obviously we're going to get to autonomous cars before this is a realization, but like being able to, like, chameleons have one eye down and one eye up at the road while people are texting.
Oh, that's great, Kate. That is so great. That is so amazing. Oh, I love that. That's
right?
Like a little applause. That is so funny.
Well, and
right? That ability would be helpful.
It's amazing.
Can you imagine? So can you imagine? You imagine you're on a date with a woman, right? And you're at a restaurant. This is all, you know, before COVID, right? I'm sitting there and I'm trying to do my, like, I'm trying to get my game on, right? I'm trying to really just, you know, give her the eyes or whatever else. And she's got one eye on me, one eyeball at me, and one down on her phone in her lap. And I'm just like, fuck, I can't
get it. I can't get it.
I can't do it. I can't do it. But the bonus, what happened about it is that, you know what, the sleazy guy, right? He can have one eye up and one eye down. He's like, no, I'm not looking at your cleavage at all. Nothing. Not one thing, right?
So many applications to that evolution, right? I have a feeling autonomous cars will come in first before we get to the evolution of being able to disjointedly look and process information.
You know, speaking of, you know, manipulating your biology, one of the things Caitlin talked about as like a plot point in this world where you're plugged in like this is like, well, if you were plugged in and you had chips, then you could control like instant REM sleep. So maybe you only have to sleep 3 hours a night, and it's like good sleep. So it's more like an on-off switch than a bedtime. And then what would that do to now all of a sudden you're working you're awake 21 hours a day instead of 18 or whatever. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah.
So
then you're like, you're not working a regular work schedule, because it's not like I have to work, eat, sleep schedule anymore. It's like I've got to schedule my day, and this hour might be work, this hour might be personal, this hour might be a sleep hour, this hour might be, right? And so that's exactly what we talked about is kind of like, what if we had that ability to, plug in, chip in, and you could say, okay, schedule sleep, and it's scheduled and it's done and it's fully rejuvenated, right? And so you wake up and you're great. Like versus I spent, 2 hours last night trying to sleep.
Yeah.
Before I actually got there.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think that's a really great idea, and I've actually caught myself realizing that I'm really fortunate not to have to battle with sleep so much. Yeah. There's a lot of people that have insomnia, that have to take medication, that really battle with sleepless nights. I mean, sure, there's been instances where I kind of keep up, and but I have a regular time that I go to bed.
Yeah.
I look at there's a routine and a ritual. My wife and I throw an audio book on, so it's like this background noise that's going on.
Nice.
I really should put something and cease the screen time. I think it's up to 2 hours prior to actually going to bed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Blue light and stuff like that. But the sleep is one of the foundational requirements. Now, changing the sleep pattern, the biology of the sleep pattern is very interesting. I don't know if, did you guys know that dolphins, they swim half asleep. You'd see the dolphin going like this. It's like sleeping, but it still functions. It still, can somewhat react. It's just like half conscious kind of thing.
Right.
That's my kids in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Before we get our coffee, that's exactly the way I am.
Well, and then, then we kind of threw in this wrench of like cheating. So if you could control your sleep and you could like maybe make that efficient and optimal, and then like, what if you just decided to push it? Like, people will always try and push the limits, right? So we thought like maybe that is the catalyst for our journey, is this character starts turning off the sleep and goes without sleeping, and that in turn evokes essentially a nervous breakdown of sorts, right? Which,
like a stress heart attack of some sort, or
and
something.
And in the system of control, where you can control all these things, then we imagined like, okay, maybe you have a healthcare system that says, hey, you can control all this stuff. If you're not listening and you're not like behaving in these things, then you don't get health insurance. That's like this world we imagined. So now he's skipping his sleep. Now he has a nervous breakdown. Now he's forced to then, go through a series of steps that he wouldn't normally do because of this system. And then, we thought maybe that's the catalyst for how this character is kind of forced into a scenario that his regular experience wouldn't otherwise have. So it's kind of...
Okay, you guys ready for philosophical insight here now?
Ooh, yes.
This is one of the things that I'm going to throw your way. And as authors, you guys are the lead authors on this. And what you decide to do with this hot potato is up to you.
Okay? I'm ready.
So there's an articulated concept about Christian hell. Okay? And Christian hell is essentially outcast from the group, the in-group, out-group. Okay? So if you imagine yourself not part of your social group, if you imagine yourself ousted from your family and your ties and everything out on your own, this is the most horrific manifestation of the fall, basically. This is the idea that you're now separated from society. And we live in this weird dichotomy where we want to be around people, but we want our alone time. But there's a huge comfort in having these connections,
right,
but we still want to have some, sort of thing, right? That individuality, coupled with eusociality. So that's the concept of hell from that sort of standpoint. And I think about the viral nature of a religion and how it just exploded. Christianity just exploded, and I'm trying to bring some parallels to this new electronic explosion, right? So Adam's painting a picture of, we can actually oust people from this, from this social norm if you don't follow these particular rules. Because, like, if you don't look after yourself sleep-wise, if you don't, do the things that you're supposed to do, you're going to be pushed out and experience some type of social hell.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The question is, does this manifest as a religion version 2.0?
Ooh, I like that. That's super interesting.
But I love it.
I don't think we considered that as a religion piece, but super interesting. We did consider having like the group, like almost the rebels, right? Who were unplugged